Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing, man? Welcome back to another Binge stream as myself and Nobbins take on yesterday's crazy game of the season. And we'll dissect a lot from it. We'll chat about the game, chat about individual performances and the result. Was it a good result? Was it a bad result? How are we feeling? We'll get through all that in a second. Before we do, let's get some shout outs in the chat. Let's get some yeses in the chat and we'll give you some shout outs there. We got Nax in the building. Good morning to you, bro. We've got VJ. Yes, Bray. We've got Church of the Poison Mind. How you doing? We've got LB9098 says bad result. I am Guardiola. Yo, LB, big up, bro. We got Fraser in here as well. Good to see you. Blackpool Blu-rays here as well. We got Jazz. Good to see you, mate. Steve M's here. Punit's here. Good to see you. Keep your comments coming, guys. Hopefully you're all doing well this morning. Big up to Robert there as well. Nobbins, good morning to you, mate. I can't forget you. How are you doing, man?
It would be weird to forget me because I'm here talking to you. It would be quite unusual. Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Really weird day, which I'm sure we'll get into. Be quite cathartic to talk about. I'm sure different fans have different thoughts on the game, and that's what we're here to discuss and chat about. And before the international break. But may I just say before we get started, top of the league still.
Indeed.
Top of the league.
Indeed. City is still top of the league. Guys, make sure you subscribe to both the channels. Myself, obviously, on the road to 10K. Nobbins as well on that road to 10K. We're pushing towards together. And make sure you get onto the More LB, my second channel. I'll link that in the description in a second as well. But, bro, as always, I sort of always ask you to do this. But what was your sort of high-level sort of take? Before we sort of deep it, what was your high-level take of yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah, on my low-level take.
You can have either low-level, high-level. Which one you want?
Yeah, such a weird game. I feel like I was happy with the lineup and the team selection. I was happy with Peps' selection, but I feel like I wasn't really happy with the application of that selection. So, for example, I really wanted that starting 11, but I didn't want it to be a Kanji progressing into midfield, and I didn't want it to be Foden on the right. I wanted it to be Walker on the right, and then Bernardo next to Rodri and that sort of double pivot thing. I also think that when I was on this show last week, I got very giddy about how good Doku was against Bournemouth, and I said, "Yeah, start him. Come on, let's take the game to Chelsea." Did a little, obviously it had that dopamine rush from the how good he was against Bournemouth. But hindsight's a thing. But having Doku on the pitch and not having Grealish on the pitch, I think, did contribute to it being a very open, chaotic, fun game. But that is not what Pep wants in a big away game against a team like Chelsea, who have proven against Arsenal and Liverpool especially that they are very good against the better sides. What we probably needed was a more conservative starting 11 and to then try to mitigate those counterattacks, because what we basically did was play right into Chelsea's hands. We decided to allow Chelsea to be and to show off and demonstrate how good they are at counterattacking and being in transition. I'm not putting that all at the foot of Doku's door at all, by the way, but I'm just saying that is. It sort of reminds me of, do you remember the Newcastle game last season? I think that was like 3-3, and it was a very open, almost like basketball game. And Pep said after the game, "I don't like games like this. I want control. I want it to be more reserved." And it did come across a lot like that. Those games are that game was in favour of Newcastle and how they play, and the game yesterday was in favour of how Chelsea play. When you combine that with lots of really weird individual performances in terms of, like, we'll get into it, but specifically, Diaz, Gvardiol, Walker, Rodri, Alvarez, combine that with the fact that we didn't maybe set up in the right way, or maybe set up in a way which helped Chelsea and hindered us, it produces what we saw yesterday. As I say, if you're a neutral, you're loving that game because it's back and forth, it's really open, really fun, but that Guardiola doesn't want to play fun football. He wants to choke the opposition and to mitigate their chances. The last time we conceded 4, I think, was the Leicester game before Diaz actually signed for City. This is how un-Pep this game was. All that being said, we still got a point, to be fair. So I'm not totally doom and gloom about it. Because, as I say, we didn't actually lose. We still scored 4. and it's a problem which can be easily resolved, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, before the game, let's be honest, most 99% of City fans were absolutely buzzing before the game, right? Because the team that came out, it was a mint team, like it's an attacking team. But this is why Pep Guardiola doesn't do stuff like this very often, because we lacked control. I mean, standard sort of midfield wasn't there. We can talk about the defensive mistakes. I'm sure we'll get into that, but the midfield protection was non-existent.
I was
Bernardo.
going to say what midfield protection?
Yeah, exactly. Bernardo Silva, although he played all right, didn't tuck in. And then this probably isn't on him. This is probably, if anything, this is probably from the manager. He didn't tuck in with Rodri and sort of double pivot it and really give us that solidity. Kovacic came on, right? People can confirm this in the chat. When he come on in the watch along, I was like buzzing. He's going to come on and he's going to sit next to Rodri and Wiltshire. He come on and he was more attacking than the last man he come on for. So that was weird. And I mean, if we go to sort of like the final goal, right, which I just cannot believe, right? I'm going to open this in paint and check this out, yeah. This is for me an absolute madness. Obviously, I can't show the goal. How is this possible, bro? I still cannot get my mind around the fact that in the 92nd minute, yeah, you've got Raheem Sterling, right? I'll get a brush on here. In this much space in the 93rd. How is that possible? You've got three midfielders on the pitch. Rodri, right? Kovacic and Bernardo. How is this possible, right? And I'll tell you why it's possible. Is because I watched the goal back, yeah. I scrolled back and watched the whole goal back. You know that goal came from our free kick. We had a free kick about 20 seconds before Sterling gets the ball there. Josko Gvardiol's got the ball on the left-hand side. Who plays it back to Diaz? Who plays it to Walker? Now, Walker's got the ball. In my opinion, I know I'm deep in this, like, but at the end of the day, when you're in the 92nd minute, you got a 1-goal slim lead against the opposition. You've got to, in my opinion, I think Walker should go back to Ederson because then you retain possession for a little bit longer. He doesn't. He smacks it up the pitch. We lose possession. Bernardo Silva presses. Rodri presses. They get out the press. And Kovacic isn't sitting deep. He's too far up as well, which is why Sterling gets the ball there. And then obviously why Brozier is in so much space in the penalty area. But that final, obviously it wasn't a goal. It came from the penalty. But that final sort of play, in my opinion, summed up why you will not see this sort of style of play again from Pep Guardiola. What does Pep Guardiola like? What's he synonymous with? He's synonymous with control of the football, control of the game. We opened up that match and it was a basketball game. And that was due to us. We did that because we can control football matches. And ultimately we paid the price because we didn't get the win. But it was just a mad game, wasn't it? I mean, it was end to end. How did you feel in the end? Because like I sort of summed it up with a tweet last night, and like I was obviously disappointed that we didn't win, yeah, because obviously I can't not be disappointed when you were winning the game with like 10 minutes to go or whatever, and then you end up drawing. But at the same time, we could have lost the game. So I'm kind of happy we've got our point in one sense, because for me, defensively, that was one of our worst performances defensively. I mean, probably like you say, going back to Leicester, I also think the Bernabeu 2 years ago when we in the last couple of minutes, that was a shocking defensive display as well. But I don't know, it's a weird one. I feel like in my head, I just want to take the point, bro, because I've seen us play bad so many times. Like we played bad against Wolves, kept on chasing the win, kept on chasing it. We lost. If you think back to Brentford at home last year, we got battered that day. I think it was 1-1 at one point. We kept on chasing. Tony scores in the 98th minute. We lose 2-1. If you think back to the Leeds game at the Etihad a couple of years ago, when it was 1-1, we were shocking that day. Kept on pressing. And I think Dallas scored in the last minute of the game or whatever. Sometimes when you're shockingly bad, and let's make no mistake about it, defensively yesterday we were shockingly bad. Sometimes when you're shockingly bad, getting out of there with a point, especially against a team like Chelsea, who are a good team, I just think you have to just be like, you have to just take it, bro. And that's why I'm not like fuming with the result. I'm disappointed, don't get me wrong. We was winning with 10 minutes to go and we didn't win. But on the whole, I'm just like, we defended that bad. It's a miracle almost that we got a point. Where are you on it?
Yeah. I mean, before the game, I obviously wanted to win because we are better than Chelsea. But in the context of the game and the context we've spoken about with like the weird setup and with the weird performances, like when that Rodri goal went in, I obviously celebrated, but I also sort of like half laughed because I was just like, that's like one of the most at that stage we were going to be winning the game. I was like, that's like one of the most undeserved wins I've like seen City have if we would have gone on to win the game. So I think a point was fair, on balance of how both teams played on the day. So at the end of it, as I say, after the match, I wasn't totally distraught about us only getting a point, because I thought we only deserved a point, quite frankly. Obviously before it, I would have wanted a win. You always want to win, especially if you got the lead in like the 92nd minute or whatever. But as I say, I was thinking more about like, I was trying to be realistic and saying, well, look at how we've played. Like it's a robbery that we've got to this stage 4-3 up. To be honest, like I don't think we played enough to get the win. So I was actually quite happy to take the point. And also context of we are still top of the table. Context of what are the chances that Pep's going to, first of all, set the team up like this again. And secondly, maybe more importantly, what are the chances that Diaz, Gvardiol, Walker, Rodri all drop another stinker of that level all at once, all in the same game? I think it's fair to say that was Diaz's worst game in a City shirt. It's Gvardiol's worst in a City shirt so far.
The only thing I'd say on
maybe
Gvardiol
Rodri.
is I actually don't think Gvardiol was that bad. Obviously, he was at fault for
first half.
goal.
He was very poor, though.
Do you think so? I don't know if he was. I don't know if he was very poor. He was obviously at fault for the goal. I don't know, man. Maybe I just watch it back. I don't think it was very poor in the first half, in my view. I didn't think it was great, but I just thought it was average. Obviously, less the goal that it was at fault for. Diaz was shocking.
Yes.
I mean, that, like you say, that is definitely the worst performance by far he's ever had in a Manchester City kit. It's not even like debatable. It's that bad. Now, obviously, I'm seeing shit this morning. I went on Twitter this morning. Apparently, something that might explain a little bit. His girlfriend apparently got what's it called? Like a carjacked or something the day before the game.
Yeah.
So that obviously can fuck with anyone. So that obviously it's a bit weird, isn't it? Like using that as like an excuse or whatever. But obviously, do you know what I mean?
It might explain how weird the performance was, to be fair.
Yeah, because it wasn't like shit as in like he was just doing stupid stuff, like made a mistake or whatever. He did dumb shit as well. You know what I mean? Like there was the perfect example, which didn't actually cost anything, but just like, what the hell are you doing? That I kept on saying is like in the first half, yeah, he had the ball, no one pressing him, and Alvarez was like just running towards him, and Alvarez had a man like touching him on his back, and he give it to Alvarez, and Alvarez was sort of like, yo, bro, what you do? I'm running to you, but I don't want the ball. I'm trying to create space or whatever. And I just thought, that's not right. So obviously now I'm waking up this morning, I'm seeing all these tweets about his girlfriend getting carjacked the day before the match. And obviously that would clearly screw with anyone's head. I mean, that's a horrible thing to go through. So listen, it was a shocking performance from Diaz. Let's not get away from it. But obviously there clearly is exceptional circumstances there with what happened there. But yeah, listen, the whole defense was just a bit weird. I mean, Walker, I just felt like he was just not really at it either. I mean, Sterling is probably one of the worst players to play against for Kyle Walker, because Kyle Walker likes to play against the Rashfords, the Mbappes, right? The players who are, strong, powerful, but don't have that quick movement. Do you know what I mean? The Vinicius Juniors of this world, even though he's done relatively well against Vinny Junior, the Sterlings, even the Mudricks, the players that are more tricky, they're the players that he's more likely to struggle against. And I did think he struggled a little bit yesterday. I think he struggled against Sterling, and even Mudrick. He was poor. But I want to ask you about Akanji, mate, because there's a lot of agendas on Akanji. A lot of people don't like him. I thought he was class yesterday. I don't think everyone's speaking about Foden on Twitter. I've seen you speaking about him as well. No one's speaking about Akanji. Absolutely fantastic, in my opinion. First half was the only defender that looked like he had his brain screwed on. So in that regards, I probably agree that Gvardiol wasn't great. Gets a bullet header, great goal. Stepped into midfield a couple of times and did a decent job. Never going to do a Stones job, but I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was our best defender by a country mile, and he doesn't get the credit he deserves, in my view, bro.
Yeah, 100%. Easily our best defender. I mean, he was the only competent one, so it's not a hard thing to do, but he was very good defensively. He bailed out Diaz a couple of times. Like there was like one moment in particular where Diaz just made a horrendous error, or maybe it was like Gvardiol went sliding in and Akanji was in the right place at the right time to deal with it. So yeah, he was very good. Obviously scored the goal as well. Very good header. I guess the reason why people aren't as keen to praise him maybe is because whilst he was very good off the ball and defensively, he was, and it's not his fault because he's not Jon Stones, so he's never going to be as good as Jon Stones in the Jon Stones role. But when he did move into midfield, he didn't really offer the same security on the ball that we know Stones does. So that did hinder our build-up play a little bit when we had the ball. So maybe that's why, I'm not saying that's why, but maybe that's why some people are not wanting to praise him as much. But I think you do have to give him his dues. If he puts in a really good defensive display, you've got to say, yeah, he was really good. At the same time, both things can be true. You know, he was very good off the ball. He isn't the best player on the ball in the midfield. I was surprised to see him being the main pivot option next to Rodri with the ball. I do think we have better options there, whether it's, you know, Bernardo Silva in there or Kova or whoever. So maybe that's why he's not getting the flowers that maybe he should do. But yeah, I totally agree with you. He was easily our best defender, and he just gets disrespected a lot, Kanji, but he is a very good, serviceable defender, especially if you think that he's not, if everyone's fully fit, he's probably not in our starting 11. So to think that he's like a squad centre-half, but he probably starts for the majority of Premier League teams, I think he does deserve a bit more credit, to be fair.
No, absolutely. I mean, these are his stats. We went through these on the player ratings, but played the full 90 minutes, got himself a goal, only misplaced 4 passes in the whole match, which is really good, especially when he's stepping into midfield. And look, 2 of those 4 passes were also long balls, which is so he's only misplaced 2 short passes, which is very good. He won 3 out of 4 ground duels, only lost possession 5 times, which is remarkable, really. 2 clearances, 1 block shot, and 3 interceptions. Honestly, man, I don't know if I'm on my own here, but he's up there for man of the match, man. I ended up, where are you gone? I ended up giving it to Haaland in the end, just because, 2 goals and an assist, and even the 3rd goal which he scored, he created. It was a fantastic, like, sort of chest down. But for me, Foden and Akanji was certainly up there, and maybe even Bernardo. He was very very good. But
they were definitely the best players.
Yeah, I just wanted to give him some credit, really, because I know there's a lot of people that don't really like him, and that's fair. Everyone's got their opinions, right? There's certain players I don't like, not necessarily in the City squad, but like out there, like Christian Eriksen, I don't rate him. It's just my opinion. It's just your opinion. If you don't like him, that's fine. But I just feel it's fair to give players credit, and it's a bit weird because we're giving credit to a defender when we conceded 4 goals, so it's a bit unique. Big up to Amar coming in with the super chat. It says Alvarez experiment needs to stop. Put Phil Foden at the number 10 position, Bernardo right wing, and Rodri. Plus another one in midfield. 4 clean sheets in 12. This defense is awful. Liverpool will score 8 or 9. What's your take on the Alvarez situation, bro? Because to be honest with you, I can't lie. I didn't think Akanji was great yesterday. Obviously, started well in the second half, getting the ball across to Haaland, but I don't want to say ghosted because that's like disrespectful, but like whatever the other word like went missing, that still ain't a great word. You know what I'm trying to say? I just didn't feel he was in the game, especially in the first half. Maybe got into the game a little bit more in the second half, but in the first half, I just didn't think he was anywhere. Has Amar got a point here? Should we try Phil Foden in the middle, put Bernardo Silva back on the right wing, who's done a fantastic job there, or what do you think with the Alvarez situation? Started the season off really strong, of course, in that position as well.
Yeah, I agree with Amar, depending on the game. I don't. So first of all, let me preface it by saying, at the end of the day, he's a striker, so he ain't gonna be as good as Foden is in the middle. That's not on him. He's a striker being asked to play 8-10. Given that context, I think he's playing amazingly well because, as I say, he's a 23-year-old striker being asked to play as an 8/10. That's a really impossible task, and he's done that very well so far. The issue, and actually no, that's fine against lesser sides where it doesn't really matter about winning the midfield battle because you're going to win it by definition because you are City and you've got other players in and around. So, for example, against Bournemouth, it doesn't matter. You've got Alvarez in the middle. At home against, I don't know, like mid-table teams. When you go away and you're asking a striker to play midfield, and you need all your midfielders to be of that standard on the ball in terms of receiving it, turning, making the right decisions as well. That's the thing with Alvarez, because he hasn't got a midfielder's brain. He isn't a midfielder. He's got a striker's brain. So he doesn't make the right decisions all the time. His first touch isn't that good. His passing isn't as good as someone like Foden or Bernardo or whatever. So in those big games, as we saw at the Emirates as well, he does go missing. not necessarily through any fault of his own, because that's not his game. Against Chelsea, I thought he was outside of our defence. He was our worst player. I know he put the ball across for Haaland, but he didn't really. He didn't really do anything. I'm just trying to think of like if he actually did anything else. I don't think he did. So I agree. I think that it is hindering our build-up play. It's hindering our progression play as well.
Just to interrupt you there. So you feel that it's only in certain games, so we can get away with it. I think at home, maybe even what do you think about home against bigger teams? Would you be happy if he's played there against Liverpool, or is it all sort of, you know, the big games, regardless of whether it's home or away? Because I feel like we might be able to get away with it against Liverpool, but because we're at home. But then I don't know whether home or away has anything to do with it. What's your view on that?
We can definitely get away with it, but it's certainly not optimal. I think it's much more optimal to have a midfielder in midfield. Even home against a lesser side, it wouldn't be optimal to play a striker in midfield, but it can definitely work because no one in that midfield area really strikes the ball like he does. He does offer a different threat, and that's fine. But if you're being pressed out your arse and you need your midfielders to have a really good first touch and control, and then make the right decision thereafter, he's not the person for that. As I say, I love Alvarez. It's not his fault he's not a midfielder because he's a striker. But definitely, for example, if when we play Liverpool or Spurs or Arsenal, whoever, it should be Foden in the middle. It should be, if everyone's fully fit, then Bernardo on the right. If Stones is out, then it's got to be Walker on the right. Bernardo in the middle. I agree with Amar. The experiment in these bigger games where you need a midfielder in midfield has to end. He doesn't offer enough. It sounds like I'm being really harsh, but it's not. It's a net negative, not only in his position, but it also means we're taking Foden away from what I deem to be his best position in the middle, where he can properly influence the game. For me, he was our best player yesterday, but I think he's wasted when he's just shoved out on the right flank. If he's in the middle, he can be more influential and more creative. And right now, I don't know why we are sacrificing Foden for Alvarez to play in the middle, and I don't get
no, because you do know why. You do. If you're being honest with yourself, we all know why. And the reason is you have to play Alvarez, otherwise he ain't going to be happy. We all know that's the truth. You cannot say to Alvarez, just won the World Cup, just won the treble. He's one of the best strikers already in the world at his age. The problem we have is Pep Guardiola has not obviously found a solution right now to play him and Haaland as two strikers in the same team. So if we don't do that and we play Foden in the middle and Bernardo right, Alvarez doesn't play. And this is what I'm saying. How long can you get away with that before he knocks on the door? And people say he's just signed a new contract. Contracts are worthless if the guy's knocking on the door saying he's not happy, he wants to leave. At some point, he'd knock on the door and say, I want to be playing football. So we are forcing him into this position because we have to play him. In my opinion, that's as simple as it gets. Because otherwise, bro, he's not going to play. Because Haaland, we obviously got Haaland in, and no one thought Haaland was going to slam it as much as he has done. I think when we got Haaland and Alvarez, we were like buzzing. You know, Haaland can play most of the games, but Alvarez will play a lot as well. We'll be subbing off Haaland. But because of how good Haaland has played, you can't possibly drop him because he's just too good. So then we're in a weird situation with Alvarez where it's like we have to force him in the midfield, otherwise he's not going to play, bro. You know what I mean? Because if we do what you say, which by the way I completely agree, I would agree. Going forward, I would probably play. Yeah, I would play Bernardo on the right. I'd play Foden in the middle. I'd probably drop Alvarez maybe for the next game. And next to Rodri, I'd play whoever. You know, it can be Kovacic, it can be Nunes, whatever. I don't really think that's the massive issue if you play them two together and you play Foden in the middle. But then you've got a problem with Alvarez because you keep doing that. At some point, he's going to knock on the door to Pep and say, I want out. I think that's a difficult situation we have. And by the way, we're going to have that situation anyway, because when Kevin De Bruyne gets back, I mean, earlier in the season, we were like, oh, Kevin might struggle to get back into the team with the way Alvarez is playing. But at the moment, obviously, Kevin De Bruyne is going to walk straight back into the team almost when he gets back. So I don't know. I just feel like with Alvarez, it's a bit of a weird one. I agree what you're saying maybe against the lesser teams, especially at home, when we're sort of overloading the ball and Rodri's basically playing as an attacking midfielder, which he does a lot. And then Alvarez can just sort of get into the penalty area and become a second striker. That works. But in tighter games or even games away from home against, you know, mid-level opposition, I just don't think we've got quite enough there with him in the midfield. And I agree. I think Foden has to go in that midfield position and Bernardo out on the right hand side. But yeah, listen, it's a bit of a weird one with Alvarez because he started the season off so well, but I do feel that there is a couple of games recently where he's not been particularly active, you know?
Yeah. I think you could maybe make it work, but you would have to probably change formation. You'd probably have to have like a diamond.
Well, you know what?
with the
Let me bring the tactical pad up on screen then, bro, and let's see if we
Sure.
can. Because you know what, this is one of the most, and I'm sure you get it on your streams as well, bro. This is the one of the most asked questions the chat send in all the time. Is obviously we've not had it recently because he's been playing a lot, but like in the last sort of year, while Alvarez has been, it's how do we get Alvarez in the team? How do we get Haaland and Alvarez in the team? So, give me an example. I wish you could like sort of take over, but give me an example of how we could sort of sort it out.
Sure. So, with the ball, this would be so. Obviously, we'd still have Edison in goal, and then we'd have our back three of whoever. Let's say Gvardiol, Diaz, and let's assume everyone's fit apart from De Bruyne. So let's go Kyle Walker.
Yeah.
There, that's fine. And then what we normally would do with City, we play the 3-2-5 or a 3-2-2-3, whatever. I think to get Alvarez in, you'd have to play a diamond. So we'd obviously have Rodri at the base of that. That's absolutely fine. Nothing changes there. But then it's sort of more similar to how we played in the Champions League final. So we'd have to have our eights either side of Rodri. So, for example, we might have, just thinking of how might it work best. It would have to be so. Sorry, can you just pop Alvarez at the tip of the diamonds first of all for my brain? So if you pop him ahead of Rodri, first of all, just so I can try to figure this out in my head.
Yeah,
there we go. And then obviously we've got Haaland ahead of him. We'd still have Grealish, Doku, whoever on the left.
We'll put Grealish out there. Yeah,
sure. And them just making sure that it would actually work, and then with our Foden on the left central midfield or right central midfield, whichever. Let's say on the left, and then we'd have another midfielder on the right. And I think we probably will have to change the defense because there's not enough defenders on the pitch now.
Would it be Stones? Would Stones not be in this?
Yeah.
role?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yes. There we go. Yeah. Yes. So that would work, and that is actually what we did in the Champions League final. Stones played as that 8. He played to the right. He played on the right hand side of that diamond. The only difference here is that we had Foden at the tip and Gundogan where Foden currently is, and then Bernardo on the right. Yeah,
because when you do it like that, that looks weird. People are like, what are you doing? But like you said, if you watch the Champions League final, Jon Stones was in this sort of position most of the game. He wasn't here next to Rodri playing double pivot. You know what I mean? He spent very little time at centre back position. It was, as you say, he was very much sort of in this area over here, down this channel. And in fact, we've seen it many times where Jon Stones was getting in behind the defence and almost being the most attacking player on the pitch at times. So,
well, that was that mental dribbling stat as well, wasn't there? Like he did more dribbles in the Champions League final than Messi, or as many compared to Messi, something like that. So he definitely can do that. Now, whether you want to argue that's optimal for Jon Stones is a totally different matter. But the question we're being asked is, how do we put Alvarez into a team which probably doesn't negatively impact the rest of the team? And I think with this, you take these sort of like the creation responsibilities away from Alvarez, you put it more on Stones and Foden, and it means that Alvarez is more of a sort of like, a second striker, running off Haaland. So that is probably, in my head, how you would get the best out of it. Whether it would work practically long term is another matter, but if you're asking me how do we get Alvarez in, which would make better use of his abilities whilst also not making him a striker, that for me is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, the other thing that I'd say is what I like about this midfield is, if Haaland did and Alvarez did end up basically playing as almost a second striker, which, is not guaranteed, you could then go to a double pivot. And then this is kind of different players, but this three, if you remember the Newcastle game at home where Foden played in this position, I think it was Rodri and Kovacic that day, was it, bro? Was it Rodri and Kovacic that day?
I think so, yeah.
And Foden was given basically the free role of the pitch in this sort of position, and he was absolutely fantastic. Now, I'm not saying that we would do that. I think we're more likely to set up, as Nobbins said, but it would give us that sort of tactical approach to go into should we want it. But listen, it's an interesting one. I still think that Pep will stick with Alvarez for now. And I to a certain degree, I think he should, because Alvarez, up until maybe the Wolves game, you know what I mean? Even though he scored a great free kick that day, it's probably been one of our best players. You know, he's been up there with one of our best players. But yeah, there are just a few occasions. Like it all comes down to the fact, which what you said, bro. He's just not he's not a creative player. He don't create that much. So if he ain't really getting the rhythm of the game, or he don't really understand where to be on the football pitch, you are basically just losing a man. And I do think that probably happened a little bit yesterday. But whether he'll go with him, the only other question I want to ask you about this system, actually, if you did play this this starting 11, would you have to swap Grealish out for Doku? Because if Alvarez doesn't, if I say Alvarez is not creative, you have only got basically one player creating, and Bernardo doesn't get the most goals and assists. So would you say you have to go Doku, or do you not think that's an issue? You're happy to go Grealish with this system as well?
I'd be happy, but again, we talked about it before. It depends on the game, doesn't it? That at the end of the day, that is the front three that got us the treble. In fairness, you could also swap Foden and Bernardo around. So you could have Bernardo in the middle and Foden on the right if you wanted. But yeah, you've definitely got options. As I say, I'm not saying that's what I want. I need to make that quite clear. I don't want that to be the long-term thing. But if the question's being asked of what's this formation which better uses Alvarez's abilities, it's probably better to give him less of a creative burden and more of a striking output burden. Because as you say, none of us were really talking about the negatives of Alvarez, and that's because he was maybe disguised is a harsh word, but I can't think of a better one. He was disguising those deficiencies with the fact that he was just getting loads of goals. And so none of us are really talking about it. We're like, yeah, he might not be a midfielder, but look, he's getting all these goals. It's fine. However, if they dry up and if we come up against a better team, then I think the question then becomes asked of, is this actually the best thing for the team?
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. Guys, loads more to discuss. Make sure you drop a like on the stream. Over 200 people in the building. Let's get those likes to 100, man. Not even got 100 likes. We need 30 people to hit that thumbs up button to get us to 100 likes. So please make sure you do that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. Make sure you check out Nobbins' channel. Link is in the description. And make sure you check out the second channel as well. More LB. Link is also in the description. Pushing towards 500 subscribers. Got a Rico Lewis video coming out very, very shortly on that channel as well. So help me out, man. I want to try and get to 500 subscribers on that. Big up to Puneet coming in with the super chat. Says, I think we'll be fine against Liverpool, provided we don't get any injuries in the international break. Alvarez minutes need to be managed as World is after him. Well, yeah, of course, international break injuries. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair comment. You know what I mean? You got to make sure you don't get players injured, right? Otherwise, you could be in the mud. I mean, I guess the good point is Pep Guardiola in the pre-match conference was very different to how he was after the game against Young Boys, in that sounds like Jon Stones might not be too far away. And I think we missed him massively yesterday.
Definitely.
Driving into, like I say, as good as Akanji did defensively and in the midfield, right? And I think he was fantastic yesterday. For me, he was seriously up there with man of the match. He just doesn't have what Jon Stones has. And that's no dig on Akanji. Guardiola doesn't have it. Pep Guardiola said as much. Diaz can't do it. Ake certainly can't do it, although he did try him against Young Boys. And Kyle Walker definitely can't do it, right? So without Jon Stones, you lose so much. You know what I mean? You're basically having an extra man on the football pitch when Jon Stones, because he just moves into midfield and you've got that four-man midfield. We didn't have that four-man midfield yesterday. Usually we go into games, we have four men in midfield: Jon Stones, Rodri, Alvarez, Bernardo, or whatever, make up the four. And we dominate the ball. We dominate the game. We have complete good control, because what other team puts four men in the midfield? They don't. So we always dominate it. Yesterday, I mean, we hardly had one. I mean, basically Rodri in there on his own, basically for most of it. Bernardo was off creating and doing an all right job, but wasn't really giving much support for Rodri. And then when Kovacic came on, listen, I thought Kovacic done all right in terms of on the ball. He didn't misplace a single pass when he come on the pitch. He did a great spin on the halfway line, if you remember, and turned the Chelsea players. But ultimately, we had no protection. So I think Jon Stones is clearly a huge miss. There's a lot of people wanting us to speak about Kovacic celebrating the Chelsea goal. What?
Well, that's not going to be true, is it? He'll have been like rallying the boys after conceding a last-minute equaliser. There's no way that a City player will be celebrating a Chelsea goal. Come on now, let's not be silly. There's no way that's happened. I refuse to believe it's happened. There's no way.
I've got the clip here. Should I put it on? It's not Sky, so it shouldn't get copyrighted, and it should be fine, bro.
In it, yeah.
It's this. That'll be all right, innit? I'm not gonna get copyrighted.
Yeah, that's
that.
fine.
Okay, so where is he? There he is on the left-hand side, yeah?
Okay.
I wouldn't say that's celebrating. Would you say that's celebrating?
No.
I think that's what's, you know,
That's
when
nothing.
you know what I say that is? That's like when you go, damn.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn. Or
That's
like
nothing.
you go boom on the desk, like, boom, you just he's clutching his fist and he's like, shit, man. You know what I mean? He's gutted. Guys, come on, man.
Even if we're playing worst case scenario and for some reason Kovacic wanted to celebrate the goal, do you think he's stupid enough to celebrate outwardly when there's like however many cameras in the stadium on him? Like it's nothing. Like people are trying to make something out of nothing there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think that's celebration. But people wanted us to speak about it, so we've done it now. And
yeah, there we go. We've put that to bed.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of comments before. I think Beyond Belief shouted it in the chat as well. So last few minutes of the stream, let's talk about Chelsea. I mean, what did you make of them yesterday? I don't know if you've seen the XG stat that went round yesterday, and that Chelsea have won by XG 11 out of 12 matches, more than any other team. So just for people that don't fully understand what that means, obviously, when you're having shooting opportunities, you're getting creating chances. The expected goals is how many goals you should score. And basically what this stat is saying is that Chelsea, on that merit, should have won 11 out of 12 games. So they're a good team. They create chances. They out-create their opposition. Obviously, clearly what that means is that they're not clinical enough, which is ironic after 4 goals. But clearly with Sterling and Jackson in your front line, that's clearly true. Are Chelsea a sleeping giant? Have they been misunderstood? Should we start putting some seriousness on their sort of competitiveness in this league? And sort of where do you think their aspirations will be for the season? A couple of Chelsea fans maybe saying, can they claw back and maybe get in that top 4 race? They're 10 points behind Spurs, but Spurs do have some tough games coming back. What did you make of Chelsea yesterday?
Yeah, Chelsea were good. Make no mistake about it. As bad as City were, and I do think a lot of it was unforced, Chelsea did also play very well. I think they probably played better than most people thought they were going to play. Like I saw some people predicting, City to batter them. I personally went for like a 2-1 to City. I thought it was going to be a tight game. Didn't foresee 8 goals. But yeah, Chelsea are a good team. Like I've watched a lot of them this season. Even the games they lose, they actually play very well. It is because they are a very young, inexperienced team with like lots of new players who haven't quite meshed together yet, or certainly didn't mesh together at the start of the season. And that's why even that their lack of maturity in front of goal maybe is like sort of being exposed. You brought up that stat earlier, like they should be scoring more than they have been doing. Yeah, they're a good team. There is too much quality in that Chelsea team to fail long term. Now, will they be there this season? I think it's too early for that. But next season, the season after, I think as City fans, that's probably when we should start to take them seriously as a genuine title challenger, to be honest, because it's a very young team, and barring like injuries or whatever, they're probably only going to get better with the likes of, Enzo and Cole Palmer and Jackson. You'd assume he will come good. And all their young players who are out injured. Like, you think like Fofana, for example. Badiashile didn't play. So, yeah, they're a very good team. They were good yesterday. They obviously played their part. I don't think they outplayed us. I thought it was an even game. But yeah, I was impressed with Chelsea yesterday. Did I say that Cole Palmer got man of the match? If so, I think that's mad. I thought he was fine. I think there's a big narrative that's happened because he's an ex-City player. I thought he was all right. Gallagher and Sterling, for me, were the best Chelsea players.
Yeah, I thought Sterling was fantastic yesterday.
Sterling was unreal,
that was old Sterling, which some people, I like to see it. You know what I mean? I like to see him doing well. I think he's had a real tough time in his career.
I like Sterling a lot, yeah.
Yeah, he's had some proper shit. And he did a really good job for us for the main part. But yeah, now that's just narrative FC, that, innit? That's just... look who scored, the lad who left City. I mean, it's like, well, Sterling also left City. You could have given it Sterling. I thought Sterling was great. I thought Conor Gallagher... I've said, man, I used to have a hard agenda on Conor Gallagher. I thought, how is this guy playing Premier League football? But I've got to say, this season, bro, I've been watching him. I'm thinking...
He's been doing bits.
He's been doing bits. He works so hard. He presses well. He's on the ball. He's pretty decent as well. He was great. I think the big one that no one's really speaking about, because everyone's like a football merchant and no one wants to get cooked, I think Enzo is completely lost in that Chelsea system. I do not know what he offers at all. And by the way, this is for someone who watched him at River Plate, right? Before people try and cook me and say, oh, you don't know what you're talking. I watched him at River Plate. He was effective at River Plate. I watched him for Argentina, effective. At Chelsea, I just don't think they've got him in any sort of the right system. I think he's lost in that system. I think they need to sort that out quickly because it's £100 million signing. And I don't think he's been good since he got there. He might have had the odd 1 or 2 games, but they need to sort that position out. But listen, they've spent £1 billion, right? They're not a 10th place team, right? The league might say they're in 10th position.
Yeah, they aren't shit.
No, they're not. And they've been unlucky. I've watched them in quite a lot of games, and it's funny, right? Because I think a lot of Chelsea fans, because the last 18 months has been dreadful, if they don't win a game, a lot of them come away going, we're rubbish, right? Because they're in this mindset of we are a dead team. Whereas someone onlooker looking up from the outside, I watched them a couple of games and I think they've been really unlucky in a few of the, and I'm right. I know I'm right because the XG thing proves that I'm right. They get into good areas. The problem that they need a striker, right? Now, whether Nkunku can temporarily play as a striker, I mean, I'm still not sure in his best position. Obviously, he's got a hat-trick against us a few years ago. If you look at his stats on Transfermarkt, the guy's played every single position on the football pitch, and he's played it quite evenly. There's not really a standout position. Is he going to be their main out-and-out like striker? I don't know. I kind of like him a little bit behind the striker, sort of a second striker, just sweeping up and creating, but getting in the box and being a danger. If they can go and get a goal, because I know that Jackson is absolutely fraud in his way. He's got more goals than half the league at the moment, but he's not a top level striker, Jackson. I know he scored a hat trick against Spurs. I know he scored yesterday, but Chelsea needs someone better. You know what I'd like them to do? Yeah, I'd like them to go and get Osimhen, and that's weird as a City fan. That's weird as a City fan saying that. But if they went and spent 150 million on Osimhen, wow, they'd have a sick team, and I think that'd be great for the Premier League, man. You got Haaland in there, you got Osimhen in there, and then you've got the 2 B-Techs in Nunes and Højlund. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I think they're good. I think they need a striker. I think they need a goalkeeper. Is that Sanchez, mate?
No, he won't win you a league title.
Nah, he's not gonna win you shit, man. He ain't a good enough goalkeeper for Chelsea at that level. But yeah, listen, if there's any Chelsea fans watching, I think you're chilling. I think for me, it's a shame from a Chelsea point of view that you had such a dead start because you've only lost 1 in the last 5. You've only won 2 of the last 5 as well, so it's not the best. But there are signs that Chelsea are there about what they don't want to do, because obviously they do. Do you know what the situation was? The top 5, bro. Is it true that the 5th place team gets a Champions League spot this year?
Yes, because it's based on how strong the nation's historic coefficient is. So basically, it's almost nailed on that 5th place gets 5th place in England will get that Champions League spot. Yeah.
So if that's the case, they are 9 points behind Villa, but of course Villa play Spurs in the next match, so someone's going to drop points. So they have a chance to sort of catch up. And if you look at Chelsea's fixtures, if they got coming up, they've got tough games. You know, they got Newcastle away, Brighton at home, Man United away. So they've got some tough ones there. But listen, if they want to get top 4, they've got to win these games, right? Big up to Chicken Wing says, this XGBS is pissing me off. This BS started when?
I will defend XG because generally, if you have more XG than your opponent, you win the game. So it is a good start, to be fair.
Yeah. I feel like it came in like maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Something like that, yeah.
Would you say? Yeah. There are a lot of people that hate those stats. Clearly, Chicken Wing's one of them. But it is. I know it's kind of annoying, isn't it? But like at the end of the day, Nobbins is right. Like it is a pretty good reflection on who played well, right? Because, for example, in the Arsenal game against City, I was going on to streams and Arsenal fans were like, we were well better than you. I was like, no, you weren't. And they were like, yeah, we got the ball in the better areas. We had a better XG than Arsenal in that game. Now, I'm not saying we deserve to win or whatever. I'm just saying, like, it can help disprove certain narratives from games when people say stupid shit. Because you're like, well, if you were so good, why didn't you create chances? Because ultimately, that's what it's all about, man. But yeah, let's see if there's anything else. Anything else really that we've missed from the game, bro? Any takeaways that you want to go through?
I think we've covered quite a lot there, to be fair. I think that the main takeaway for me is that we didn't play well. Lots of people will say Chelsea did play well, and yet we still didn't lose. People talk about, lack of creativity, whatever. We did score 4 goals. We are still top of the Premier League table, and Chelsea away is not an easy place to go. This is a place where Arsenal, and if we compare it to, like how Arsenal and Liverpool did, because they're our closest title rivals in terms of the current Premier League table, we definitely did better than what Arsenal did, for example, because, we didn't go 2-0 down. We didn't require, absolutely awful, goalkeeping mistakes to score. And I know the Liverpool game was very early on, so I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure we did better than Liverpool when Liverpool went to Chelsea as well. So as I say, context needed. It's not all doom and gloom. As the chat is saying, there's now the international break to sort of like have a bit of a reset, have a bit of a chill, bit of a think. And another week for Jon Stones to hopefully come back, and ultimately long-term Kevin De Bruyne. We've said it, you and I have said it many times. As long as we are in and around first place, only like a few points off top spot by the time De Bruyne is back fully fit, and Stones is back fully fit. As long as we're in the business end of the season and we are in touching distance, even if it's like 3 points, I still back us to not only make up that 3 points with our fully fit squad, but also to make up like another 3, 6, 9 sort of points. So yeah, I like to look on the bright side.
That's absolutely true. You know what I mean? And this is what we said for some time. We don't need to be top of the league. The best news is we are top of the league. We're top of the league by a single point, which is great news. You know what I mean? And as Nobbins said, I never said we needed to be top of the league at this point. I wanted to be within probably maximum 6 points of the top, really. You know what I mean? That's 2 games. Anything more than that, and then you're pushing it a little bit. We're going into the international break, right, with the worst defensive performance in the last 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean? It was absolutely shambolic. Chelsea have just put in one of their best performances, definitely of the season, possibly of the last 2 years, and we didn't lose. Do you know what I mean? So context, people. Yes, it's frustrating that we didn't win the game, considering we went, we was leading 3 times and that we was leading in extra time before they got the penalty. Yes, there's lots of stuff to sort of like moan about, but ultimately, I'm backing that yesterday was just a bit of a freak defensive performance. Why? What's the evidence of that? Why? Because it's happened once in like the last few years. And the Pep Guardiola sort that. And by the way, let's also just be honest. Fundamentally, if one of the reasons we were so bad defensively, because our midfield was so exposed, I can guarantee you now that Pep Guardiola does not play that against Liverpool. He doesn't do that against Liverpool. He'll shut up shop. He'll do the midfield, standard midfield. He'll tell Bernardo or Kovacic to sit next to Rodri, and we'll dominate the ball in midfield, and we'll have much more protection in the defence. He's not going to play this same system. So all those neutrals that said Manchester City's boring to watch, yesterday you got a one-off, yeah? When we play Liverpool, I'm pretty sure that the goals will be a lot less because Pep Guardiola will make it with that midfield. Big up to German Chicken Wing again, says, don't bet your money on Stones being fit, though. Well, yeah, listen, I don't know what's going on with Stones. It certainly sounds a lot better than he initially sounded, because Pep was making it sound like he's not even going to play for the rest of the year. But it sounds like he's certainly going to be back maybe by the end of the month. Who knows? But one thing that we have to accept on that chicken wing is that Jon Stones cannot be relied on for a full season, and we need to make sure that we have other options. Now, Pep Guardiola said in his press conference that Gvardiol can't play, or he's not proved in training that he can play that midfield role. I personally am a believer that you only find out in games, right? Because ultimately, a game is where it matters. So I would like to see Gvardiol at some point be ran in that midfield just to see if he can do it. But obviously, Pep doesn't think he can do it, bro, in midfield.
Yeah, and that's totally fair enough. I remember tweeting about, I've talked about this before. I do think he can do that role on a long-term basis. But like that BBC tweet came out, and he got loads of like United fans coming out saying, "Oh, what's the difference between this and what Ten Hag's done with our players? Why isn't he getting?" Mate, Gvardiol's 21. It's in his first season, and you're expecting him to immediately be able to come in and play the Jon Stones role. Let's not forget, by the way, Jon Stones, after like 3 or 4 seasons, Pep trialed him in midfield, and it was a disgrace. It was awful. He couldn't do it. So it took Stones years to be able to get to this point, to be able to do this role. So like all these people thinking that Pep's in the wrong for suggesting that Gallagher isn't quite ready to do the Jon Stones role, it is mental to think that's a criticism of him. He's 21. It's his first season. It's an incredibly challenging thing to do. Oh, that annoyed me. Sorry, that was a rant.
It's fine. Probably a good way to end the stream.
Sorry, can I say one more thing before we leave?
Yeah,
Sorry.
sure, bro. Sure.
I went on like a Twitter space after the match, and I don't know. I understand like lots of football fans who are adults are actually children, and they like to react after 90 minutes. But there's so many people saying that Rodri's now bad, and he's not a defensive midfielder, and he's actually an overrated fraud, and it one bad game. I don't. People acting like oh, what a surprise! He was isolated and 3 midfielders on him all game. Oh, he didn't control all the space. What do you want him to do? 2011 Sergio Busquets couldn't have done that. That really annoyed me. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I just had to get off my chest. That really angered me, man.
Yeah. No, listen. It was like I say. I think, to summarize it, because we're going to finish up, I think that basically our midfield was the main issue, and then the defense. Because the defense wasn't great, right? But the midfield was also shocking, and the midfield gave no protection to the defense. I know a few of the goals, like the defense couldn't really do much. But example, if you look at the penalty that came in the final minutes of the game, like Sterling should never have that much space anyway. It's a 92nd minute, you're winning by 1 goal. Why has he got so much space? Went for it at the beginning of the stream. So the midfield should have locked that off. Diaz doesn't foul the guy, mate, if someone's on Sterling or within a couple of yards. So listen, it's one of them. Is what it is. Sometimes people say shit in the heat of the moment as well, bro. That's something that I sort of know in it, because I've done it before. I say shit in the heat of the moment. We all do. You're not human if you don't say stuff in the heat of the moment. So I would point that to, if City fans are saying that, probably having a bad time. Maybe
this was rival fans, by the way.
Yeah, well, rival fans are just bitter, right? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Rival fans are bitter, and they basically, there's not much that you can murk City about. I mean, I'm going to go on a stream now with Saeed, and these guys are probably going to try and cook me for a draw against Chelsea. Like, that's not the worst result in the world. But because we're so good, and because we win so much, and because we have so many fantastic players, they have to take small W's. So if they have to go on a space and be shameless and say Rodri's fallen off, then that's what they got to do. Guys, that is another episode of El Bins done. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you did, of course, make sure that you drop the show a like. Really helps the algorithm, lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you're watching back on the replay, then give us your comments down below. I always check out the comments. I can't reply to them all, but I always check out the comments, see what you guys are saying. So let us know what you think down below in the comments section. Do us a favor and make sure you subscribe to the channel as well as we move towards 10K. And make sure you sub to Nobbins. His channel is in the description. You can see that. If you go to the description, you can click on that as well. And make sure you check out my second channel, More LB, for more City content and more random content as well on there as well. Maybe some like proper IRL type streams. I might go, I don't know, I might just go for like walks and shit and just record, do some mad stuff. That I know, mad stuff. That I went for a walk, eh?
Do some gym streams.
Yeah, who knows, man? Who knows? But go check that out. I'm trying to get that to 500 subscribers, guys. So massively help support me if you can go do that. Stream will automatically redirect. Yeah, I'm going live now on the Saeed TV channel. See what these guys are trying to cook me for some reason. But yeah, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll catch you in the next one. See you in a bit.